First up, though, it does look very, very likely that there will be some sort of military action against Syria and President Assad's forces, and indeed those forces backed by the Russians. But what will that military action, what form will it take? And will Britain be involved actually providing military support? Will we actually send fighter jets? Will we send our bombs? Will we even one day send people, or actually send our own men? Well, many people think that's very unlikely. But the question is, what can we do? What will we do? And exactly whether or not the Prime Minister needs to have Parliament's vote to support any action in advance. Well, let's talk about all of that with a Conservative MP, Johnny Mercer, who's a former captain of the Royal Artillery, who served 3 tours in Afghanistan and joins us now. Good morning to you, Johnny.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us. Now, you've written a piece in the Sun newspaper this week in which you've talked about the need for there to be action to stop what you called these evil chemical attacks on innocent people, and asking for action to be taken. Do you believe that it's military action by the Brits that will be important and decisive? Obviously, the Americans have all the firepower. They probably don't even militarily need us, although maybe for a moral certainty, perhaps they might prefer to have as many allies on side as possible. But what sort of military action do you think could be taken, and what would it achieve?
Well, I think the crucial thing here is to build an alliance of countries that are prepared to stand up for the values we're so quick to espouse in the West. I mean, we've seen this chemical weapons use clear from the Assad regime over a number of years now, and you can pin a lot of the foreign policy challenges we've seen back to 2013, where Obama set his red line, said if you use chemical weapons, we will act. He didn't. Britain followed suit and did not follow through after a parliamentary vote. And since then, you've seen a sort of emboldening of Putin. He got involved in the war as well. He's pushed through into Ukraine and other areas. And these people will continue to act unabated until we actually stand up for something. Now, nobody wants to see any sort of full-scale conflicts. We've had Iraq. We've learned the lessons from that. We've established structures to make sure the mistakes made, and they were profound mistakes made in that foreign policy in Iraq, can never happen again. But it doesn't mean we just let things like this happen without any sort of response at all. I think it's a very dangerous position to be in.
Well, again, we have let it happen without any response. Under President Barack Obama in the United States, he said there was this red line in the sand. He then allowed that to be crossed with chemical attacks with no action. And then when Donald Trump came into office, he did take action very quickly after the last chemical attack. But again, it was very limited action, attacking some of the airfields, and notice was given to the Russians to remove their aircraft in advance so that we didn't upgrade escalate the war. But the reality is that didn't act as a deterrence. So we know that the deterrence doesn't work. So the only answer now is to actually make it impossible for Assad, or with or without Russian support, to actually carry out these sort of attacks. And that involves a level of military action on a different scale, doesn't it?
Yes, I agree with you. I think that clearly that strike previously by President Trump was designed to do to send a message to President Assad. I think that we need to sort of steer away from getting binary outcomes in this conflict. I don't think we're going to do anything singularly that is going to stop the use of chemical weapons or end that war. But we have to send some sort of signal about what this is about. And I think you're right. I do think there should be some sort of military escalation to have a more profound effect on the regime and the chemical weapons stockpiles and his behaviour. How we do that, there are a number of different options. You can target individuals who are involved in the decision-making cycle around the use of chemical weapons. You can go after the stockpiles. You can use offensive cyber, which is something we generally don't talk about in this country. But, there's no point sort of sending jets to bomb an aircraft when you can just turn the lights off and disable the airfield permanently. So there are options available. But in this country, we've got to be careful about engendering a sort of atmosphere where post-Iraq we're just content to do nothing because we're so upset with ourselves over the mistakes that were made there. There were mistakes, but I think we sort of take it on the chin. We learn from those. They were profound mistakes, but we learn. Britain has a modern, forward-looking role to play. Our allies and friends and partners expect us to play that role. And I think it would be a significant mistake if we didn't.
Well, you wrote in your article in The Sun this week, the Iraq hangover has gone on too long. But there is also not just I suppose, the shadows of past wars. There's also the shadow of future wars. This absolute fear that people have, I mean, and quite understandably, that any conflict in Syria could escalate into a conflict with Russia, a West meets Russia conflict. That is the biggest fear. And any action that would seriously disable Assad's ability to murder his own people would actually end up targeting the Russians as well. Is that fundamentally what is stopping the Western governments acting?
Yeah, I think that that is clearly a significant concern. But the issue with Russia, I'm afraid, is that they will keep pushing until they're stopped. So whilst nobody wants to see any sort of confrontation with Russia, we need to lay down what our clear boundaries are and what our lines are and stick to them. And, the way the Russians operate these days with proxy forces and with private military companies and so on, they're always going to try and push those boundaries. And we shouldn't be, paralyzed by fear at the idea of sort of upsetting the Russians on this. They are absolutely complicit in this program, and any sort of action that says we do not consider this acceptable is going to rub up against Russia. Now, clearly, we need to handle that extremely carefully, and any sort of degeneration of conflict must be avoided. But I don't think we should be fearful of the fact that if we get involved in this, and send a message to President Assad, we're somehow going to upset the Russians. They are absolutely complicit in this. They have the blood of thousands of Syrians on their hands. And they need to be held to account in some way as well.
Well, when we talk about holding them to account, obviously, what about holding our own government to account? Now, there's been some precedent set. Tony Blair, head of the Iraq war, that parliamentary vote to go to war. Also, the decision by David Cameron back in 2013 to have a vote, which he then lost as a result of this opposition being led by the then Labour leader Ed Miliband to stop any military action, any incursions whatsoever regarding what was going on with Assad's forces in 2013. Should Theresa May recall Parliament and hold a parliamentary vote of MPs before she takes any action? And if she did, would she win that vote?
Well, I'd like to think she would win that vote. This sort of protocol of going to Parliament, there's nothing constitutional that says it needs to happen. It was something that happened under Tony Blair when we got involved in a very slow time, deliberate conflict into Iraq. A lot of MPs got their fingers burnt with that, which I completely understand, and they want to see parliamentary approval for foreign intervention. The problem I've got with that is that you have a lot of factors go into making a decision about foreign policy, whether it's sensitive intelligence, whether it's also forced dispositions and so on, that are never in the public domain. They will never be made available to Parliament. They shouldn't be either. And all of that sort of intelligence picture, the whole thing, the balances, the risks, and everything is viewed upon by the National Security Council and Prime Minister. The sort of call for parliamentary scrutiny, and of course we must be evidence-based in everything we do. We don't want to get left behind by endlessly putting things to a vote in Parliament.
And if she did lose a vote, if she went for a vote and she did lose it, would that undermine her? If she went for military action without going for a vote because she fears she would lose it, would that undermine Theresa May's leadership?
Well, I think we're getting to theoreticals. I could clearly see how that wouldn't be helpful. But look, I think the idea.
But that's an understatement, isn't it? Wouldn't be helpful. I mean, if the Prime Minister was seen not to go to Parliament simply because she didn't think she had the majority to get the support, that would be quite a big statement, wouldn't it?
Because if you don't end up not doing the right thing because you're worried you're going to lose or it's going to go against you, I'm not sure that's the right thing to do either. I think that she should come on and sort of come forward and say that we're going to stand shoulder to shoulder with the Americans and French. We will take, she will give statements in Parliament. MPs will have the opportunity to question that, but ultimately she is our elected leader. She's good at this stuff. She's got a strong hand on national security, and we should we should back her up in that.
Okay, let's just finally, we had a tweet in from listeners yesterday. I was asking what action should we take on Syria on the chemical weapons attack, and I'd say 95% of people were saying, do you know what? The summary, not our problem. Leave them to it. We've got involved in the Middle East before. We don't want to get involved again. Not, we're really sorry. People are dying. Not our problem. What would you say to those people?
Yeah, I completely understand. Look, the way politicians have conducted foreign policy over the last 15, 20 years has been painful to watch. The idea you can conduct foreign policy according to the British electoral timeline, when there's a general election, we'll pull out of country X and country Y. I'm afraid just doesn't work, and we've got a poor record on it. It's down to sort of my generation of MPs to try and bring a more strategic and global view to this. I don't think a little Britain is what people genuinely want. I think we do stand up for things. We have traditionally done so. We do believe in what's right and wrong, and we don't stand for dictators gassing innocent kids without any sort of response at all. So I understand their view. I disagree with it, but I understand why it's there, and politicians have got to do better in advocating what military action looks like. What are the outcomes? The idea you have clear binary winners and losers and everybody's happy at the end of conflict does not happen anymore. But we don't get out there and advocate for this. And, we've got a lot of work to do. I accept that.
Johnny Mercer, thank you very much for joining us. He's Conservative MP. He's also a former captain of the Royal Artillery, served 3 tours in Afghanistan. And like me, an armchair general, he's actually been there.